Hello, and welcome to my webinar titled The Digital Divide: How Public Libraries Can Bridge the Gap. In this webinar, we define the concept and discuss the history of the digital divide in the United States, examine current digital needs, and take a look at the ways that libraries can help address these needs. My name is Shauna Bishop, and I am an MLIS graduate student at Valdosta State University. I'm also a public library director in a small rural village in central New York. As a director of a public library in a rural area, I have experience with helping many people who come to the library for computer and internet access. For many, the library is the only place that they can access the internet. Many others rely on the library for printing and basic computer use. For some, the cost of high-speed internet is more than they can afford, and for others, there isn't even high-speed internet available where they live. There are still many parts of rural New York and the rest of the United States that are dead zones for high-speed internet. The digital divide is a concept that was first described by the National Telecommunications and Infrastructure Administration of the United States Department of Commerce beginning in 1995. It was a term used to describe the difference between those who had regular access to computers and internet information and those who did not. The digital divide disproportionately affects people with low incomes, people in minority groups, older people, and people who live in rural areas. Lacking access to these technologies and information helps to contribute to poverty and inequality. As more and more information and services move to online availability only, many people are being left behind. The United States government first tried to address the digital divide by passing the Telecommunications Act of 1996, a program that provided money to schools and libraries for computers and internet infrastructure through the E-Rate project. This allowed many public libraries to offer internet-ready computers for public use in libraries. In addition to government-funded efforts, the Gates Library Foundation, a program through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, invested $1 billion between 1997 and 2018 in technology for libraries to address the digital divide. Other private organizations and companies have also provided funding to libraries to address the gap, including Annie E. Casey, Kellogg, AT&T, the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, and the National Urban League. While these funding opportunities help to provide connectivity resources for libraries, there has been little done to help with computer and internet costs for individuals and households. A 2015 study done by the United States Census Bureau found that 23% of households have no internet access at home. That same study found that access decreases as income decreases, showing almost 50% of households with an income of $25,000 or less had no home internet access. Along with affordability issues, many rural communities don't even have the infrastructure to access reliable internet. A recent Pew Research study found that only 63% of rural households had broadband internet. Internet service is provided by private companies in the United States. There is little financial incentive for private companies to expand services to rural communities, leaving these households few or no options for reliable internet access. While the digital divide has existed since computers and internet were first available for personal use, the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted how many inequalities still exist. When everything shut down due to the pandemic in March of 2020, including most public libraries, many people were left with no internet or computer access. This cut off people who were already isolated from much-needed programs and services. Many had difficulty accessing vital education, healthcare, and financial services, and many were left with few entertainment options to help pass the time stuck at home. When New York schools closed in March of 2020, school districts attempted to provide education online. As teachers and staff scrambled to create digital lessons to keep kids learning, those without home internet access were unable to participate. Our local district made paper packets for these students that had to be picked up and returned every few weeks. While this may have helped with some basic skills, they were unable to participate in virtual meetings that provided teacher and peer interaction. By the time school started again in September, the district had obtained Chromebooks for every student and mobile hotspots for those who needed them. While this helped some, there were still families that lived in dead zones where even mobile hotspots won't work. While the pandemic highlighted many of the challenges of educating students who don't have internet access at home, it's important to note that these challenges will not disappear once students are all back to in-person learning. McLaughlin estimated that approximately 5 million households with school-aged children have no reliable internet service at home. This leaves children trying to do homework with the options of staying out late at the library, sitting in parking lots with free Wi-Fi access, or simply not doing the assignment. A study done by the Hispanic Heritage Foundation found that 50% of students have reported that they were unable to complete a homework assignment, and 42% received a lower grade due to the lack of internet. Before the pandemic, telehealth services were slowly gaining traction. When the pandemic hit, many non-emergency healthcare needs came to a halt. If someone needed a doctor for something that wasn't considered an emergency, one of the few options was a telehealth visit. This happened fairly quickly, with an estimated 50% of Medicare visits being virtual by April of 2020. Those without reliable internet access were left with few, if any, options for healthcare, especially with the libraries closed. Again, although this issue was highlighted due to the pandemic, it was an issue before this. Before the pandemic, the American Hospital Association reported that 76% of U.S. hospitals connect with patients remotely. That same report identified a lack of reliable internet access as a barrier to expanding these services. The pandemic highlighted more inequalities in financial services. Banks closed, moving to online access only, leaving many with barriers to managing their finances. Unemployment claims had to be filed online, and the status of stimulus checks could only be accessed through online accounts. Walden called attention to these issues, stating, "The digital divide in the context of banking goes beyond the ability for people to receive government aid in a timely manner. It has implications for everything, from monitoring account balances, depositing paychecks and paying bills, to more nuanced processes like checking credit scores, applying for loans, or procuring unemployment compensation." In addition to the previously mentioned issues that were highlighted by the COVID-19 pandemic, the shutdown left many people at home with few options to keep busy and entertained. Libraries closed, cutting off access to books, DVDs, and other forms of entertainment. Venues of all types closed, and people were encouraged to remain home. Without reliable internet access, many were cut off from social interactions and entertainment options. Libraries have been attempting to help close the digital gap since the mid-90s when the E-rate program began. Digital services in libraries began with basic access to in-house computers for the public. Basic digital services found in most libraries have expanded since then to include free Wi-Fi access, digital checkouts and downloads, and other various information services available on library websites and social media accounts. Public computers have become a staple in United States libraries. Many states require public access to computers as the minimum standard for public libraries. New York lists public access to computers and printers as a minimum public library standard to meet community needs. Many people rely on these public computers for daily life tasks and printing needs. This is especially important in rural communities where there are fewer internet options. One study found that approximately 50% of people who visit rural public libraries do so to use the public computers. Reel, Bertot, and Jagger reported that approximately 70% of rural libraries serve as the only free internet and computer access in their communities. Most U.S. libraries offer free Wi-Fi access for the public. The mainstream use of smartphones and tablets has allowed internet access for some who may not be able to afford home internet. However, phone plans that provide sufficient data can still be out of reach for many. It is important that libraries offer free Wi-Fi services to help those that do have these devices with the ability to use them for internet access. Groups most likely to use mobile devices for internet access include young adults, non-whites, the less educated, and the less affluent, with these devices providing more options for accessing online content. Free library Wi-Fi enhances this opportunity by allowing these disenfranchised groups greater opportunity to use their devices to their full potential without fear of data overages. It has become commonplace for U.S. public libraries to offer digital checkouts for library users. Depending on the services that libraries subscribe to, these can include ebooks, e-audiobooks, magazines, music, and movies and TV shows. These checkouts can be downloaded to many different devices. While digital checkouts have been growing at my library over the last few years, their use really exploded during the pandemic shutdown. While there are many benefits to providing digital checkouts, there are also challenges. Those without internet service or compatible devices are unable to take advantage of these options. There is also the issue of the exorbitant cost to libraries to provide these services. Libraries are able to provide many services through digital lines of communication, such as websites and social media pages. Basic information about the various programs and services offered at a library, along with hours of operation, can be easily distributed through these lines of communication. Links to online catalogs and digital collections allow users to place holds and view various materials from anywhere. Virtual reference services are also offered by many libraries through websites and social media. Now that we have reviewed the effects of the digital divide and identified what digital services are already offered by most libraries, let's take a look at what more libraries can do to help bridge these gaps. This can seem like an impossible process in light of how big of a problem this is in the United States, but focusing on your local library's community can make it seem less daunting. Weber suggested addressing this challenge by following 3 steps. Step 1. Assess and respond to the needs of your community through meaningful conversations. Step 2. Optimize funding opportunities to support your efforts. And Step 3. Think outside the box to create effective solutions that are informed by those in need. Although each community's needs are different, one universal goal that libraries can work toward is to remove barriers to access. Some libraries require a library card to access public computers and the library Wi-Fi network. While this may not be a problem for some people, others are unable to get a library card due to the lack of proper identification, the lack of a permanent address, or a lack of parental signatures. Other libraries block access to these services on cards that owe fines. These actions tend to do the most harm to the populations that need the library digital services the most. Providing digital services can be very expensive for libraries. One way to help with this is to seek out grants for technology services. One positive of the COVID-19 pandemic is the recognition of the implications of the digital divide. Hopefully there will be more grant opportunities through governments, nonprofit organizations, and private companies to help address these needs that have been highlighted. Another way to secure funding is through advocacy efforts at the local, state, and federal levels. Fishbane and Tomer stated that local leaders, plus their state and federal peers, need a new agenda focused on comprehensive digital equity. They said that this should include expanding digital equity tracking, building advocacy networks, and funding digital equity programs. Partnerships are another way to secure funding to promote digital equity. Iyer emphasized the importance of libraries forming partnerships with organizations that share similar goals at the local, state, national, and even global level. When we pool our resources, we can have a greater impact. One basic thing that libraries can do to improve access is to expand their Wi-Fi range to include areas outside of the building. This allows people to utilize the Wi-Fi network even when the library is closed. People can stand outside the building or sit in cars in the parking lot for more privacy. This is especially helpful for telehealth visits when privacy is very important. Many libraries have had success with hotspot lending programs. These allow users to check out a hotspot for a certain amount of time. Many different hotspot service providers offer programs for libraries. that give libraries control over the devices, allowing them to deactivate the device remotely if it is not returned. These programs provide internet access for a variety of devices and can be used anywhere there is network coverage. TechSoup has a partnership with Mobile Beacon that offers affordable hotspot lending opportunities for libraries. More details can be found at this web address. Along with hotspot lending, many different devices can be loaned out to library patrons. Laptops can be borrowed to pair with lendable hotspots or for use on their own. They can be checked out for use outside of the library or for in-house use for people to use in more private areas of the library. This may be especially useful for video calls and telehealth visits. Along with laptops, I have seen libraries that offer Kindles, LeapPads, Rokus, Nooks, and even gaming systems. There are many different options based on the needs of your community. In addition to allowing patrons to check out hotspots, some libraries are bringing hotspots to the populations that need them. One great example of this is Seattle Public Library providing hotspots to homeless camps. Other libraries have retrofitted old bookmobiles into mobile hotspots, parking them in different locations and neighborhoods each day in an attempt to provide internet access to those who need it most. While providing internet access is a huge part of addressing the digital divide, libraries can also play an important role in increasing digital literacy. Programs that teach basic computer skills, internet search skills, how to fill out online job applications, how to use various digital devices, and how to access available digital library services are also very important. The digital divide in the United States is not a new problem, but the extent of the issue has been highlighted by the recent COVID-19 pandemic. As more services move to an online-only model, more people are cut off from those services. Libraries have been helping to serve disenfranchised populations for many years. By identifying community needs, advocating for digital equity, forming partnerships, and using creative problem solving, libraries can lead the way toward closing the digital divide.